Hey, what's up, everybody? This is the place where you get edified with yours truly, Dr. Eddie, best-selling author and empowerment speaker. How you doing? How you living? How's it going? What's happening? I hope you're doing well. Listen, have you joined my social circle? What I mean, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and we don't stop at Eddie Connor Jr. It's imperative. It's important. I want you to be a part of the inspiration that's taking place on those specific social media sites. Are you a part of my academy? I want you to make sure that you join my academy community. I want you to make sure that you join my academy family, where we focus on faith, identity, relationships, speaker training, financial empowerment, and so much more. I want to see your face in our digital space. Once you do that, you can go right to dreddieacademy.com. Go to dreddieacademy.com and tap the join now button to be a part of what is going on. Listen, let's get right into it. I want to talk today about TNT, explosive. I want to talk today about TNT. And what do I mean by TNT? Trauma and triggers. I want to talk about how to heal from what's hurting you. Listen, none of us are strangers to struggle. If you're going to go through this life, you're going to have some places of struggle. And oftentimes you don't have to be 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 and above to be introduced to struggle. Oftentimes we are introduced to struggle and pain at an early age. The people you thought were going to heal you and help you wound up extending their hands to hurt you and harm you. They say sticks and stones will break your bones, but words never hurt. That's a lie. Words do hurt us, and sometimes those words cripple us and now keep us living in a place presently in our past, because we have not healed from the vestiges of our past, right? Some of us have been in places to where we feel bad for how people treated us. We feel victimized, and now because we're victims, and so now as victims we victimize ourselves. Listen, you know you're in the hands of a manipulator when you feel bad for what they did to you. You know you're in the hands of a manipulator when you feel bad for what they did to you. And I want to get you to a place to where you free yourself from the toxicity, the trauma, the triggers that keep you isolated, that keep you living low to the flow, that keep you, yes, dressed up, but really messed up. Smiling on the outside, but suffering in silence on the inside. Saying you're blessed and highly favored, but really feeling low to the flow. There's a scripture, Isaiah 26:3, that I love. It says, I will keep you in perfect peace if you keep your mind stayed on me. And a lot of times we're not in perfect peace because we keep thinking about all of the imperfect things that are happening in our lives. We think about how imperfect life looks. We think about, when we look in the mirror, how imperfect we look, right? And as a result, we find out that the greatest enemy becomes the inner me, because here it is, we have unhealed trauma. And hear me on this. How can you address what you won't confess? How can you heal from what you won't deal with? Right? Your life becomes a bevy of trauma, and really unhealed trauma, because you have not dealt with what seems to be dealing with you. And as a result, our relationships become traumatic, because this is what we do. We now bleed on people who didn't even cut us. And as a result, we now cut ourselves. How do we cut ourselves? We cut ourselves with stinking thinking. We cut ourselves with self-doubt and dismay. We cut ourselves with all the reasons as to why it won't work versus focusing on why it will work. We cut ourselves because now we form trauma bonds. We form traumatic connections with people who express the same type of trauma we have. We don't just attract people that we want. We attract who we are. Yeah. We don't attract what we want. We attract who we are. We attract the hurt, the pain, the shame, the strife, the bitterness. rather than the better of what is supposed to take place and transpire in our lives. Dr. Joy DeGroy, in her book, Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, talks about the wounds that we carry in our DNA. She talks about the wounds that we carry, generational, in many cases, the generational curses that are not generational blessings, the subjugation of our race, the abuse, the neglect, the painful experiences, the hurtful things that have transpired in our lives that manifest and even metastasize in our relationships with other people, much less and primarily the premier relationship with ourselves, right? You can't expect anybody to love you if you don't love yourself. And as a result of not loving yourself, you'll reject the love that people want to give to you. Scripture says, guard your heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of your life. However, guarding your heart doesn't mean build a wall. Guarding your heart is about building bridges through discernment, about building bridges through direction, about building bridges that provide positive connection. But you can't do that because you'll build a wall from the trauma and you'll reject love. You'll be looking at love with an ulterior motive. You'll see love from a place of suspicion because you have not healed. I'm wondering, have you ever been smiling on the outside but crying on the inside? Have you ever been, laughing externally but crying internally? Have you ever been in a group of people to where nobody would think you're alone, but you feel alone? Thinking negatively and self-doubt and dismay and unbelief, right? Until you heal the boy, until you heal the little girl that is within you, then the grown you will only be a shell of yourself because you're really not who you are. You're operating in a place of imposter syndrome. You're operating in a place of fear. You're operating in a place of dismay and doubt and depression and mental discombobulation. You're operating from a lens of trauma. Dr. Sigmund Freud suggested that we are in adulthood what we have experienced in childhood. Some of us are carrying father wounds. Some of us are carrying mother wounds. Some of us are carrying other family wounds. And now we bring all that same baggage to our relationships. Relationships are like boarding an airplane. Too much baggage is going to cost you. Until you get rid of what you shouldn't even be holding on to in the first place, hear me, is going to hinder you from walking into the blessing of your destiny. I mentioned post-traumatic slave syndrome, but there's also PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, where that is a mental disorder that develops because of a traumatic event. Living in neighborhoods that have dilapidated housing is PTSD. Hearing gunshots at night in your neighborhood puts you in a place of PTSD because now your environment sounds like a war zone. Having your heart broken over and over again numbs you to the place to where even it hurts to be happy. Puts you in a mental place of PTSD. Being in places where people don't even value you and respect you and really show you the love that goes beyond words but is seen in works brings about stress, brings about mental discombobulation and anxiety, the assault, the injury, or the death of a loved one, much less the injury to yourself, a serious accident, God forbid domestic violence, cases and forms of PTSD. And what we can't do, we can't numb it. We have to acknowledge it. Let me say that again. You will always stay in a place of negativity and of fear and of trauma if you continue to numb it and not acknowledge it. A lot of us are dealing with intrusion, with the repeated flashbacks, with the nightmares, with the involuntary recall of the event, with depression, with fear, with shame, with self-criticism. We're in a place of even avoidance where we don't even want to address it. And in many cases, we block the memory from our mind because it was so painful. It put us into such a place of shock. And we don't even want to take the temperature of the trauma because the pain is so exhausting. The pain is so exhaustive. And the pain keeps our soul boiling in the heat of a hellish situation. And so when you talk about TNT, when you talk about trauma and triggers, what is trauma? We've got to get to the root of that. Trauma is an emotional response to a terrible event. Trauma is an emotional response to a very deleterious event that could be an accident. It could be abuse. And immediately after the event, there's shock. And sometimes there's even denial. There are long-term effects of it. The unpredictable emotions, the flashbacks, the strained relationships, the physical symptoms like nausea, like headaches. One of the worst things of trauma is to be violated, is to be taken advantage of, to where now the perpetrator victimizes the victim, and now the victim victimizes themselves. And then their story is not even believed by their family, by their friends, by their loved ones. And the inquisitive question now becomes, what did you do to spark that? Isn't that interesting? What do you do to where do you even turn to where now the trauma has taken over your life, and now you're trying to deal with the pain in a harsh way. You're trying to drink it away. You can't even get a good night's sleep, and you're popping a melatonin every night. You're abusing yourself, and maybe not abusing yourself physically, but you're abusing yourself mentally, socially, and emotionally. The emotional wounds that we continue to carry, that we continue to ignore, that we don't even want to talk to anybody about. And oftentimes, even as men, what our sisters oftentimes will do, if they're going through something, they're going to get on the phone. They're going to talk to somebody. Us as men, we've been taught to hold it in. We've been taught to get to a place to where, listen, us as men, we hold it in. We don't talk about the pain. We don't verbalize, we internalize, simply because we have often seen pain as weakness leaving the body. You know, we don't really want to even talk about our issues because what we have been castigated as is you got to be Superman all the time. Don't be Clark Kent. Don't show the emotional side, because oftentimes vulnerability and masculinity cannot coexist in the same space. Oftentimes that vulnerability is seen as femininity. And because the vulnerability is now not addressed, it becomes toxic. It becomes toxicity, as many people would say, toxic masculinity. Because the boy has never been healed, and now he becomes an angry man. The wound that you carried about your father, the wound that you carried about maybe a missing mother, the wound that you carried about what people said to you and how people hurt you and harmed you rather than healed you and helped you. It now moves into a place of things that are triggering you, and you have an adverse reaction. What is a trigger? A trigger is a person. You could say a trigger is a noun. A trigger is a person, place, a thing. In many cases, a trigger is a person, place, a feeling that immediately induces some stress. Right? It induces a stress-based physical or even an emotional response that's based on a traumatic experience. These triggers lead to anger. These triggers lead to sadness. These triggers lead to all types of deleterious things to where not only we hurt people, but we hurt ourselves in the process. You see, healed people heal people. But on the contrary, it's hurting people that hurt other people. And I want you to answer this. What are your triggers? Maybe you're writing some notes as you're listening to me. But what are your triggers? What are the types of situations that you're in? What are the thoughts and the emotions that you're experiencing? What does your body feel like when you're triggered? And some of the common triggers that we have that are internal are oftentimes anger. They're the memories. Our mind doesn't think words, our mind thinks pictures. If I say the word dog to you, if I say cat, you're automatically thinking specifically of what that dog or that cat looks like, right? We think about the memories, the internal triggers of loneliness, the internal triggers of feeling vulnerable, feeling abandoned, the sadness, the anxiety, the frustration, the tension, the feeling out of control, the pain of what it is that we have gone through, that we don't feel like we have a portal to even express ourselves because you've had to appear so strong for so long to so many people. You've had to literally wear a mask to where now if you express what it is that you're dealing with, people now think about you differently. Really, as strong and as resilient as you portray yourself to be, I can't believe that you allowed that to happen. I can't believe that even this specific situation or incident happened to you. Listen, I can get very personal on this because I remember, if anybody knows my story, if you know my story at all, I'm a survivor of stage 4 cancer, chemotherapy, radiation, lost all my hair, my self-confidence, my self-esteem, my will to live. My own biological father never visited me one day in the hospital. The people who I thought were preying on me were literally preying on me. I was sitting on the sideline expecting my demise. A lot of people gave up on me. A lot of people didn't think I would bounce back from a setback. A lot of people did not think that I would find the can of cancer, but by the grace of God, I'm here and I'm healed. I remember, I think I was in my early 20s or so, early 20s or late teens, something like that. And I'm going into a convenience store. I don't know if it was CVS. I don't know if it was Walgreens. I don't even know if it was Rite Aid, but it was one of those. And I'm, just doing a little bit of shopping. A guy notices me who remembered my ordeal with cancer. I mean, I was in pretty bad shape, being diagnosed with cancer as a tender teenager. And I remember the guy didn't even say hello. Almost cornered me in the convenience store, almost cornered me in the store and said these words to me. I'll never forget. He said to me, "I thought you died." I mean, I didn't even get a hello. I didn't even get a what's up. I didn't even get a yo. All I got was, "I thought you died." Isn't that something? I mean, the pain, the vitriolic pain that I experienced just from those words. Words, sticks and stones will break your bones, but words don't hurt. Yes, they do. But the anger that I had, I was so angry from those words. I could feel, I was literally clenching my fist. I don't know if you ever felt angry enough to really go oops upside somebody's head. I wanted to that day, right? I was going to give this brother a piece of my mind and a piece of my fist because he was giving me a piece of his mind, but no piece of mine. I was so angry. And I looked at him like, I can't believe what you're saying to me. And I'm so glad that I controlled my emotions, right? Uncontrolled emotions can wreck your life. I controlled my emotions, shook my head, as we do on text, SMH, and walked off. And it dawned on me, and sometimes, you block out that pain as best as you can, but some things you just can't block out. And it took years for me to really just grasp that whole situation. That not only did he think that I wasn't going to make it, there were other people who thought the same thing that he did. He just was crazy enough to express it. The saying goes, don't say everything that comes to your mind. Don't let it flow out of your mouth. and he didn't adhere to that rule at all. But to be able to control that anger, I got to give myself a pat on the back for that. To be able to even think about that triggered me. And the reason it triggered me, hear me, because the memory of the trauma came right back to my mind. Oh, I'm healed physically. But there was some healing that still needed to take place internally. And I was triggered to have an emotional response simply because my emotions were triggered by trauma. And so many times we are in that specific type of place. Triggers that are internal, but even triggers that are external. The breakup or the end of a relationship. What you see on the news, and sometimes we're seeing so much decay and depravity and crime and violence that we're now desensitized to what should never be normalized. Right? It's certain specific places, certain specific people who you're triggered by when you see them. Let's tell the truth. Right? And now we're dealing with anger, we're dealing with irritability. Our senses are sensitive, sensory sensitivity. Our mood is messed up. We've disassociated, we've detached seemingly our mind from our body, because in many cases what we go through is psychosomatic. What takes place here affects us here. What do I mean? The headaches, the nausea, the writhing in pain. And hear me. That comment that guy made to me, I had to forgive him. It wasn't instantaneous. It took me years to forgive that individual, but I had to forgive him. You'll feel better when you stop being bitter. That bitterness leads to sometimes the physical ramifications. That bitterness now becomes arthritis. That bitterness becomes now deleterious. That bitterness now becomes heartache and pain, and now becomes shame. I had to forgive. And anxiety, depression, and even a lack of forgiveness are all symptomatic aspects that are residual effects of trauma. That anxiety, right? Trauma has an effect on the mind. Trauma has an effect on the body. But one thing that trauma has an effect on is our spirit. What do you do when your spirit is crushed? What do you do when you're so reduced to where you feel as if you don't deserve the best, and now you settle for less? You settle for what you shouldn't even be attached to in the first place, because you've been broken by trauma. And we've got to heal from what's hurting us. We have to take the time to heal from it. One of the greatest pains in life is not physical, it's psychological. You can see the physical pain of somebody breaking a leg. You can see the physical pain of somebody limping. But the psychological pain of in many cases, the psychological pain of a broken brain can be deleterious and exacerbate the trauma that you have experienced in your life, even on a greater level. Next is, you got to validate your experience. You have to understand that what you went through is real. Yes, it was painful. Yes, it was hurtful. But you can't allow anybody to invalidate your experience. You can't allow people to talk you out of your feelings or how you process what you're going through. You know, how you feel is not your fault. And then nobody can fault you for how you feel. Right? You can't allow people to tell you, oh, what you've been through, you know, everybody's been through that. Well, listen, we can all go through the same thing and feel something different, because we're not all the same. We're not all monolithic. Allow yourself to process what you're going through. Validate your experience, but also validate yourself in the midst of the experience. All right? Validate yourself by affirming yourself. Tell yourself that you're healing. Tell yourself that you're more than a conqueror. Tell yourself that peace is on the inside of you, that you're going to walk in joy, right? That freedom and favor follows you, and it lives on the inside of you. Validate your experience. Don't allow anybody to diminish you because of it. Next, breathe slowly and deeply. Some of us, sometimes we just need to take a deep breath. Need to go, listen, I feel better already just by doing that. And I believe you will too, simply by taking some time to just breathe and believe. Sometimes we just need to take a deep breath and just get all the stress off of us and out of us. Next, think positively. Right? Our thoughts, what we're thinking dictates where we're going. And we got to think about something positive. The neuropsychologist, Dr. Rick Hansen, said it only takes 12 seconds for the creation of new neuron connections when we think positive thoughts. Positive thoughts lead to new neuron connections in our brain. Right? It replaces stress with thoughts that are going to bless us. It replaces thoughts of just survival and surviving to now thriving. Think about something that is going to take your mindset to the next level. Tap into your imagination. That's why you have an imagination, right? Tap into your creativity. Tap into the imagination. Bring the world to life and see it in a vivid color, rather than just seeing it in gray. See it in neon, right? Think about your favorite flower. Think about receiving beautiful roses. Think about an amazing sunset and a beautiful sunrise. Think about it when you rise in the morning and you hear the birds chirping. They're serenading you, right? Because you've arrived to a new day. When you go outside and you see the wind rustling through the trees and leaves swaying back and forth, right? They're waving to you because you're fearfully and wonderfully made. Think about, maybe you've been to Malibu, or maybe you've seen photos and video footage of it. Think about listening and hearing and seeing the waves crashing against the rocks, and as you see the oceanic beautiful view of seemingly a orange-pink sunset that just cascades the whole city and the environment. Take your mind to that level, right? The prism of your thoughts is dictated by what you're thinking about. It's your mindset. Your mindset matters. Take your mindset to the next level and think positive. You can replace 75% of our thoughts, which are negative, simply by thinking positive for just 12 seconds. Try it. It'll work. Laughter. Scripture says laughter is medicine. Scientists suggest that laughter releases happy hormones. So laughter really is like medicine because it boosts your immune system. It rewires your brain. It helps you to retrain your brain and your thinking. Before you go to bed, each and every single day, as you carry the burdens and the strain of the day on you, don't just take it to the bed with you. Don't just lay down with it. Take some time to watch something that's comedic, something that's going to lift your spirit, right? To de-stress yourself. Surround yourself with people who make you feel safe, but also cause you to laugh, right? Laughter is medicine. It's a good stress reliever. It's a good relaxation technique. And then, as I said before, the mindfulness, self-care, doing expressive writing and journaling, but also having the tenacity and the mindset to understand that you can transform what was painful into something purposeful. You can find wisdom from your wounds. You got to dig deep into it. You got to dig through the junk and find the jewel that's on the inside of you. Nobody else can do it for you. You have to do it for you. It's going to take work to rid yourself of trauma. It's going to take work to rid yourself of those triggers. But the work is worth it. Why? Because you're worth it. You got to recognize your value. You got to know your worth. you can live through dying places. All the pain that you've been through, get something from it. Not something that's going to hurt other people, but something that's going to lift other people to the next level, right? From your trauma is a testimony. From your trauma is a place of a triumphant story. Somebody's waiting for you to be who you are so they can become who they're supposed to be. Don't cheat us. Don't cheat the world by hiding it, by suffering in silence from it. Shine through it. Shine through the shame. Shine through the sadness. Shine through the storm and the rain. Somebody is waiting on your story and your journey of how you've overcome and how you healed from what hurt you. Listen, I hope you got something from it today. I hope this topic of TNT, trauma and triggers, helped you to heal from what's hurting you. I want to hear from you. Let me know. Give me some feedback about the topic in the comments. I'd love to hear your reflections and your thoughts on it. Listen, if you loved anything that you heard and were empowered by it, I guarantee you it's going to go to the next level when you join my Academy community, where we focus on faith, identity, relationships, speaker training, and so much more. We deal with topics just like this one on a grand scale in even greater depth. Go to DrEddieAcademy.com, tap the Join Now button to sign up, to register, to be a part. I want to see your face in our digital space with so many other great leaders, thinkers, movers, and shakers who understand that their network determines their net worth. That this is not about competition, it's about collaboration. You need to be a part of it. I encourage you to go right now, DrEddieAcademy.com, to join us. And then join my social circle, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and we don't stop. Connect with me at Eddie Connor Jr. Listen, it's going to the next level on the next video. Stay tuned, stay connected, stay enlightened, stay encouraged, stay uplifted, stay edified. I'm yours truly. Peace and love. It's Dr. Eddie.